parole.
The floor is yours, Mr. Bouchard. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Ministre.
Good morning, Minister. I would also like to commend you for your act of bravery that took place on the weekend when you saved someone from drowning. And I hope that you will be just as courageous in acknowledging that there is a consensus in Quebec and even outside of Quebec against your decision. So here's my first question. Given that a major document was published stating that the loss of specific data that will occur further to your decision to go from the mandatory long form to this national survey, can you please tell us whether your department did preliminary studies, the preliminary studies required to ensure that this loss of data was compensated for? Of course, as I said earlier, this decision was made on the part of our government to change the long-form census questionnaire in order to protect Canadians. Canadians who are concerned with being threatened with prosecution for not filling out this questionnaire. And once again, I know that Statistics Canada recommended the status quo. That is true. And it is important to make that clear. But our government chose an approach that will allow us to strike a fair balance between forcing citizens and providing the necessary data. So I think this is a fair balance, but it is important to say that a long-form census questionnaire has become not mandatory, and that is why I asked Statistics Canada to consider the options. We chose one of the options proposed to improve our concerns. Thank you, Minister. The Federation Council will be meeting in the next few days, and that meeting will address some of the changes you have made to the long-form census questionnaire. Should the Council of the Federation come to an agreement to challenge your decision to cancel this long-form census questionnaire, do you intend to renounce your plans to have this voluntary survey, given that the provinces and Quebec will likely ask you to reconsider your decision and make the long-form census questionnaire mandatory once again? Well, there are many players who want to see the long-form census questionnaire remain mandatory. But as I have said, we have decided that it is important to strike a fair balance between the requirements of institutions, provinces, territories, private enterprise, which always want a great deal of information from this sentence, and protecting Canadian citizens, because Canadians should not be threatened with stringent, harsh measures if they refuse to answer very difficult questions.
Trying to be fair and reasonable about how best to balance those interests of citizens and of those who would like to have more and more data. If there are other solutions that are arrived at by this committee or by the provinces or by other groups that do not do violence to the principles that we are trying to express, I would certainly take a look at those. I'm not closing the door to any of that, but at the same time, it has to be consistent with the principles that the government has enunciated and I've described here today.
Oui. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Minister. I know that you are well aware that we are in a period when we are trying to fight the deficit. So have you calculated the additional costs that your decision could entail? And how do you justify these additional costs? Well, as I told the media, there is an additional cost of $30 million to launch a public campaign to convince Canadian citizens to fill out the questionnaire. But at the same time, I believe that every census costs a lot of money. But we think that it is important to strike a fair balance between the rights of Canadian citizens and the requirements for information. Thank you, Minister Clement. Thank you, Mr. Bouchard.